Big hello to all the Hawkesbury Library members out there. My name's Damien Linnane. I've been asked to give an author talk today. I've done a couple interviews in the past, a few actually, but this is my first standalone recording as such, so let's hope it goes well. Yeah, so I'm Damien, I'm 34. I've just finished a master's degree in information studies, specialising in records and archives. Hopefully, I'll be a librarian or archivist myself rather shortly. I work as a portrait artist and also a writer, obviously. I do graphic portraits by commission. There's some of my drawings on the wall behind me, and yeah, I do a few writing things. Done some freelance journalism, I've done some ghostwriting, but today I'm going to be talking about my novel, Scarred. There it is, Scarred, Damien Linnane, published by 10th Street Press. And yeah, what can I tell you about my novel? Well, the first interesting thing about it is I wrote it by hand while I was in prison. So, a bit of a unique story there. I went into the prison system at the end of late 2015. I got a 10-month sentence for a crime the sentencing magistrate described as vigilante justice. If you Google my name, you can read all about it, I guess. But the short story is someone in my family was attacked, and I made the choice to take the law into my own hands, and then I dealt with the consequences of that. But not a you can make the most out of any situation, and originally I was like, all right, well, I'm going in the prison system. Let's start that master's degree I've always wanted to do, and so I figured it'd be the perfect quiet place to study, and turns out that wasn't possible. As the education officer in there explained to me, there was no computer access for inmates in New South Wales. That there is in other states, but lucked out and decided to commit a crime here. I'm living in Newcastle. I'm from Sydney originally. Was living in Armidale when I was arrested. That's where I did my undergraduate degree. And yeah, there was no computers there, so which meant I couldn't pursue tertiary education that I wanted. Prisons only had like basic literacy courses and short courses, but obviously I already knew how to both read and write, so the literacy courses didn't help much, and the short courses weren't gonna, pass by 10 months. So yeah, I found out I couldn't study. That was a bit depressing, but what was even more depressing was I had my mandatory assessment with the prison psychologist, and I said to her I started getting therapy before I was arrested, and I told her how that had been really beneficial and how I'd like to continue it, and she smiled politely and she said, Damien, every single person in here would benefit from therapy, but unfortunately there's no funding for that. And I was also assessed as too low risk to be eligible for rehabilitation. So about a week in, I found out this information slowly over the course of the first week I was there. And after about a week, I realised that for 10 months I was going to have no education, no rehabilitation, and no therapy. And that's when I started to get really worried. Friends had asked me if I was nervous to go into prison, and to be honest, I wasn't. I just gotten out of 5 years in the army. It's a pretty rough environment. I figured prison wouldn't be harder, and it wasn't in that sense at least. But yeah, I did start to become quite afraid of prison once I realised I couldn't do much constructive there. And so about a week in, I'm sitting in my cell, and all I've got is 6 pieces of paper and a pen. And I wrote a letter to a friend of mine, but I couldn't post it because I hadn't order things in prison, but they come up 2 weeks later, so I didn't have any envelopes and stamps yet. So I had like 4 pieces of paper left, and I'm like, well, what can I do with my time? And I'd had this idea for a novel in my head. Actually, first got the idea for it when I started getting the idea rather when I was about 17. Really glad I didn't write it then because it would have been terrible. I had no life experience. But yeah, I was in there. I was 29 at the time, and it's like, right, there's that story in my head, the one I've been putting off because, study, university, relationships, trying to find work and keep my head above water and things. Like everything I'd found the excuses not to do it. You hadn't made the time for it, and I'm like, right, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm never going to get a quiet time like this again, or at least I hope I don't. And so I started writing that idea I had down, and I got it all out. I had to write, two lines to each line, because I only had four pieces of paper, and I got the whole idea out, and I looked at it and I read back over it, and I've been reading a book a week since I was like 10, so without sounding too full of myself, I know some good writing when I see it, and I read back over it. I'm like, hey, that's not bad, but what happens next? Because I had this idea for this scene in my head, and I got it out, and I'm like, all right, well, chapter two, what happens next? And I couldn't write straight away because I was out of paper, but every day we were allowed to go to the library, and every day we were entitled to three sheets of paper. Don't ask me how they worked that out, but that's what we were entitled to. And so I'd take my three sheets home to my cell, and I'd keep writing. And the biggest struggle for writing in prison at first was actually finding enough paper. Three pieces of paper doesn't last that long, even if you write two lines to a line, and you got it all jammed in there, and then you make a mistake and you're trying to scratch it out, and then you're writing in the margins and like in the tiny space left, and it's just the piece of paper was a mess. I wish I had kept the draft of my novel. I've got some scans of the first draft, but to be honest, once I actually typed it up and got out, I couldn't wait to throw the thing away. It was a few bad memories, and like the stress of trying to get that done. But yeah, the my manuscript was looked like a shambles. I actually got two pieces of cardboard from the back of writing pads once I eventually got them, and managed to get a hold of a hole punch from my job where I worked as a clerk, doing paperwork for the prison. And I got a friend of mine who worked in the laundry room to pinch me a couple of the cable ties they used to secure laundry bags together before they put them in the industrial machines. And I had this manuscript that was all these pieces of paper and two bits of cardboard on either side, and then I put the cable ties through the paper, and that was my manuscript, the most ghetto prison looking manuscript you could imagine. But yeah, it was really difficult to get paper for the first several weeks. I was, you get dessert every second day in prison. Nothing to write home about, like generally a muffin or a cookie that has your jumbo cookie that has more preservatives than actual ingredients, and not something I was going to eat. So I'd trade it to other people for their the paper they had, and this went on for about 6 weeks because yeah, you can order things in prison, but they turn up about 2 weeks later, and that presented a problem because for the first 6 to 8 weeks I was in, I kept being moved because we had an overcrowding situation in New South Wales prisons at the time. I mean, prisons are always above capacity, but it was particularly bad at the end of 2015. I'd actually been reading about it all in the news before I went in, and yeah, I kept getting moved. And when you order those things in prison, like you can order, it's called buy up. It's generic stuff like writing pads, pens, chocolate, cans of tuna. You can even get like like clock radio. Yeah, and probably the stereotypical things you can imagine you can have access to in prison. And yeah, every when you order this stuff, if you get moved to another prison, the order doesn't follow you. It gets refunded, and you have to try again. And I couldn't get anything for the first 8 weeks. I couldn't even get a pair of flip flops. So I was playing Russian roulette in the shower blocks. Am I going to get 10 here and here? It was it's funny now. It wasn't at the time, I can assure you. But yeah, I was for the first 8 weeks. I was struggling to get paper, and yeah, once I got settled at the prison I was classified to, it didn't really get that much easier because I had to hide that I was writing a book. And the reason for that is because, yeah, Scarred, as you can probably tell from the cover, it's a bit violent. It's a crime thriller. When I was sentenced, the magistrate called me a vigilante, and that was the idea I went with. I wrote a novel. The main character is a vigilante killer. He's living in Sydney in the CBD. He's a psychology student by day, and he doesn't really plan his killings, but he's trying to cleanse the world of people who annoy him. I guess people he thinks don't deserve to be here, and that's the main character in my book. Book also focuses on a second killer, one who's targeting women, and the vigilante killer eventually sets his sights on him, and the book focuses on the two of them, and also the homicide detective who's hunting them both. So you got the vigilante hunting the other serial killer, and then the homicide detective going after both of them at the same time, and wondering what the hell's happening in his town, really. And yeah, naturally, crime thriller, violent book, as I put on the back cover, not for the squeamish down the bottom there, because if you like crime thrillers, I think you'll love it. But yeah, it's not for everyone. And the thing in prison is you're not allowed to do anything that could be construed as glorifying violence or even just violent in general. If you I taught myself to draw after I finished writing my book in prison, and drawing pictures like that is completely fine. If you drew anything that could be related to a crime, for example, I had a friend. Everyone has to find hobbies in prison because there's not much to do in there. It's pretty boring. And I had one friend who would write comic strips, and I don't even remember the punchline of this particular comic strip, but I remember the final scene ended with the character climbing over the prison wall he was escaping, and it was a bit of a joke. And he put that on his cell wall, and along with a whole heap of other comics he'd drawn, and for a bit of a laugh. And when the guards came and did their random inspections, they overreacted, as they always do anytime they see something that they don't like, and they put him in solitary confinement for about a week while they investigated his plans to escape. Took them about a week to figure out it was just a joke. It was a stick figure climbing over a wall. So, but the point being, that was the overreaction they had to a cartoon stick figure, climbing over a wall. So, if they had have found out I was writing a book about murders, that would have ended really badly for me. It would have been confiscated, for starters. Might have even been referred to the police because, it was at least the same theme of what I was arrested for, which was vigilante justice. And yeah, so I had to hide the fact that I was writing it. And I did that by, I kept a journal in prison as well. And this ghetto manuscript I was telling you about, the one with the cable ties, I made sure the first few pages were a journal, so that when the guards inspected my cell, if they opened it, they're like, oh, he's writing a journal, and that's how I hid it from them. Thankfully, they never, I didn't cause any problems in prison. The guards didn't really have a problem with me, and they never skimmed through it. And so I didn't get caught trying to do something constructive with my life while I was in there. And but it wasn't just that. I was very conscious of the fact that if there was a fire or a riot or something, if I just had a spilt coffee all over my manuscript or something, um, wrote it by hand, which wasn't easy in itself, but obviously, I couldn't exactly back it up in the cloud. So every time I wrote a chapter, I had to write it twice. And so I'd write it out, and then I'd put it in my manuscript, and then I'd write it out again. And every week or so, I'd post that chapter to a friend of mine, one of my best friends, and I said, look, just keep these safe in case my manuscript in prison gets destroyed. I'll have a copy when I get out. And so I ended up sending her 33 envelopes of just these chapters. And thankfully, I didn't have to use them. But yeah, I was a lot of anxiety in prison in general. But I had a lot of anxiety writing my book. Not only did I have to hide it from the guards, I was constantly worried that even if my book was destroyed, I had a backup copy. But yeah, then what happens? Do I get her to post that back into me? It's my only copy. Do I wait until I get out? And yeah, thankfully it didn't have to come to that. But yeah, there was definitely not the place to be, prison, if you've got any anxiety issues or trying to do anything constructive, unfortunately, because yeah, there's no way to back up your stuff. But yeah, I got out in September 2016. Started looking for a publisher, which, as anyone who can tell you, is a first-time writer. That wasn't easy either. You know, I got 12 rejection letters, which I believe is the same number as J.K. Rowling, so that kept me motivated a bit. Every time I got a rejection letter, I just powered through. I'm really didn't want to resort to self-publishing for my first book at least. So I just every time I got that rejection letter, I was like, all right, well it's clearly not good enough, so let's refine it a bit. And yeah, the draft, you know, I'd pull it out and read back over it and find things that needed expanding and like where I was waffling a bit and cut it down. And eventually I had draft 14 and I sent that out and it got picked up by a small publisher. And yeah, book came out last November. Bit of bad timing. I had a promotional tour of sorts this year that was going to start in late March, and I had a book signing scheduled for late March, and then just a few days later, I was going to give a talk at the Newcastle Writers Festival, and then in a week before this whole thing kicked off, I had a couple more appearances and yeah, interviews and stuff booked as well. And about a week before that happened, COVID, yeah, it ruined a lot of plans, I guess, and yeah, I wasn't immune to that, but yeah, now I'm promoting my novel online. Just same thing I did when I was in prison. Right, this is a bad situation, but how can I make the most of it? So yeah, I've been reaching out to libraries and publications, and thankfully the good people at the Hawkesbury Library have said they're interested in me recording a video, and here I am today. So yeah, hope you yeah, if, by all means, yeah, check out my book. Obviously, I'm here to promote it, but also if you want to hear more about me or my story, website's damienlinnane.com. You can follow my art. It's on Instagram at Embers of Retribution. And yeah, feel free to ask me any questions at all. I'm not shy about the whole experience of prison and stuff. Obviously, it's not a secret, and I'm really open about talking about it because I think it's important to talk about challenging things like that. So yeah, feel free to reach out and ask me any questions. And yeah, if you read my book, I really hope you enjoy it. Thanks for listening.